Oh, it's doing something funky. Okay, here we go. All right, we are live. Let's go. Well, how are you today, Mr. Bakari?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. It's been a lot of news, so I've been bouncing around, and being on CNN. If there's breaking news, you always have to be there. But I'm happy to be here with you all today. It's an awesome opportunity, and thank you for the support.
Awesome. For those of you who are joining us live today, my name is Dr. Rena Dixon. I'm the Director of Health Services here at That Forward. And we are a nonprofit that is based in Columbia, South Carolina, working on advancing reproductive health for young people. And we are so excited to have South Carolina's own Bakari Sellers with us today, talking about his new book, My Vanishing Country. And I do have to say is I'm not from South Carolina, I'm from Georgia, but I'm a country girl. And it was real refreshing to have someone display their love of the country. We get a lot of flack for loving the country. And I'm a Southern girl, true and true. So I think that was my favorite part about your book, is hearing you talk about Denmark from your perspective and how much you actually love it.
Well, it definitely is a love story to the South. It's a love story to the country. We tried to elevate voices, which are many times just forgotten and not talked about. The church ladies we grew up with, the icy lady, my friend Pop. And for me, it was an opportunity to just give a voice to the unheard and people who have been talking about their social, cultural, economic position for a long period of time. And it was also a cool chance to push back on some narratives that people have. When we say rural or working class, most times people associate that with being white in this country. And I wanted to say, no, that's also us too. And usually when they say urban, they mean black. So I wanted to say that there are black, rural, working class men and women, and we've contributed so much. And just to, kind of flip it on its head about being country, we aren't all country Bamas who marry our cousins, right? We have contributions that can be made politically, socially, culturally, and it was refreshing to write, and I'm glad people are reading it around the world.
Awesome. Let me start off by asking you, what made now the right time for you to feel like you wanted to tell your story and write this book?
I mean, to be completely honest, I wanted to write a political book, but no one wanted to buy that book. I tried to write a book like about what it's like being in the age of Trump. Told me that she would ask me about massacres. I talk about it, whether or not it was being a elect story that people needed to read. And, in the first 2 weeks since it's been out, it's been impactful. And I hope that, you never want to release a book during the middle to say the least. But this has been an opportunity because people are now talking about the issues we lay out in My Vanishing Country.
Thank you. One of the things that touched me about the book was you talk about your relationship with your father and how impactful he was on your life. We talk a lot about parent-child communication here at Fat Forward, and I wanted you to talk a little bit about how important was your father's influence on you, and how do you in turn show that to your own children?
So for me, I think the biggest thing my father did was be an example. I'm a firm believer that you can't tell a kid he can be a black doctor if he's never seen a black doctor, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be able to show your kid and show your children different experiences. And my father always had me around his leg, showing me the ropes of the civil rights movement, showing me the ins and outs of what the struggle was. And, I'm a product of the product of that proverbial, it takes a village to raise a child. And, we have to make sure that our village is strong, especially today. And with that, give kids experiences so that they can reach out and touch and smell and taste new things. And in turn, you'll be surprised how far these young people can go.
What advice do you talk to your teenage daughter about?
Teenage daughters are hard. They really are. My advice to her is to be very, very confident in who she is. We set, one of the things that I always tell people is you have to set a very high level of expectation. You'll be surprised that children are resilient, resourceful, and they can meet your expectations if you set them. And so we set high expectations. We try to share as many experiences with her as possible. But we also just let her be unapologetic in who she is and let her feel comfortable in her own skin. Let her know that mistakes are going to be made in life, and it's not about those mistakes you make. We never let those define us. It's how you bounce back. And, I'm very lucky to have her in my life. She just turned 15. And to be honest with you, one of the things you learn is that they teach you more about yourself than you could ever imagine. And so the communication there, and as they get older, I'm showing them how to navigate a new world where race is a defining issue. That uniqueness it stands out, to say the least.
Awesome. How, in keeping with that theme of talking with young people, how do we help teens and young adults talk about what's going on in our country right now around race, around the deaths of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery? How do we help them express their feelings and then have meaningful conversations with them?
It's okay to be unapologetically Black first. It's okay to let them know that their life matters and has value. And then you have to tell them the truth, which is very difficult, that George Floyd was killed because he was Black, that Breonna Taylor is a no-knock warrant served on the wrong house, would not have happened to her if she was white. Ahmaud Arbery was lynched because of the color of his skin. And you have to tell them that. And you have to tell them that there are people in this country who will not give them the benefit of their humanity. But you can't tell them that and take away all of their faith and take away all of their hope. You have to urge them to remain faithful and remain hopeful. And it's a very, very difficult balance. I'm telling you all of this to say that I don't have all the answers. My parenting is still very aspirational. But you have to tell your kids the truth because it's necessary.
Very good. Thank you. What do you hope to, how do you expect to move into those conversations with the twins as they grow older to comprehend more of this?
Well, hopefully the world will change. So let me get back to you on that in 5 or 6 or 7 years. I mean, we have some work to do, and while they're still, today they'll be touching sand between their toes for the first time. So let them have that purity and innocence before we tell them, how hard they have to love and how they have to love their neighbor even when their neighbor doesn't love them. I want to maintain that innocence and that purity as long as we can. My daughter, on the other hand, is in the real world. She sees these images with her own eyes, and we can't disguise those images. We have to tell her who she is, tell her that she's great, and tell her she can be absolutely anything that she wants to be. She has to love herself and love her neighbor, and her parents will always be there for her.
Love it. I love it. I love it. Speaking of the twins, one of another impactful section of your book was you speaking about your wife Ellen's experience in delivery, and that calls attention to the crisis that we have going on in America right now around Black maternal health and the deaths that our Black women are experiencing. How do you feel like racism impacts healthcare? And what led you to make some of the decisions that you made around her having Black doctors with the twins?
So my experiences around healthcare are 3 direct experiences. The first, growing up in Denmark, we lost a hospital about 10 years ago because of petty politics. And then there have been a lot of hospitals in South Carolina that have closed because of a lack of Medicaid expansion. And so that lack of access to care is real. I mean, my mom got diagnosed with leukemia around the same time, and you can't have someone who just had a bone marrow transplant going through all of those things where you don't have a hospital, right? That's just not safe. So that was first. And second, of course, my wife going through her situation and hemorrhaging so much blood and almost dying during childbirth. I guess it was a certain level of wisdom that she and I had. It was wild because we specifically wanted and chose Black doctors for a circumstance we thought would never happen, and then it did. Right? It's the wildest thing ever.
Right.
And I don't know if she would be here today if those doctors were not Black women. One of the doctors left her garage door open so the babysitter could come when it's 11 o'clock at night. And she had an 8-year-old, and she just got out of her bed and ran away. I don't want to say what other doctors would have done, but we do know based on statistics and data that her cries may not have been heard or valued. She may have been told to take a Motrin and call them in the morning, but the doctors rushed back to her care, all 3 of them, and got her in surgery. She was in ICU for 36 hours, and it was an interesting moment. You can't prepare for that. We did everything we could do on the front end, and for me, it was just trying to be there and be strong as hard as it was. And in the book, I talk about this. You never realize the characters of the people around you, how they really are real life characters until you write about them.
Mm-hmm.
But I talk about the strength of Kai during that portion as well, and it's a unique experience to have. And the fact that Black women are 4 times more likely to die than white women during childbirth is a political issue that we need to talk more about. And then the last thing is, Sadie got diagnosed with biliary atresia and got a liver transplant. And so having to go through that and see a broken transplant system, see the inequities in a transplant system, just gave me a different outlook, all within a year of my life. And so I think that there are definitely implicit biases in the way that we have or treat people through our healthcare delivery system. And then we have the structural and institutional racisms, which produce quality care. So it's a convergence of a lot of issues that lead to bad health outcomes.
Right. How has not having a hospital impacted Denmark?
Well, I mean, first of all, just that you understand the basic concerns, which are the care, right? You can't go and get quality care. That's first. But the second thing is people forget the economic impact, because when you lose a hospital, you lose your first or second biggest employer. You lose all the small business and economic stimulus around the hospital, the restaurants, the pharmacies. You lose the florist. And it continues to breed into the despair. When we talk about My Vanishing Country, that's one thing that you hear and you talk about, because that economic impact, that hospital, that hope, it breeds despair as your hometown, as your country is vanishing before your eyes.
Right. So I liked hearing about your journey to the Essie House from your perspective of kind of being like the wonder kid, knocking on doors, trying to make it happen. What advice do you have for South Carolinians of trying to move progressive policies forward? You hear a lot of people are frustrated, and you talk about how poor white people vote conservative when actually they're impacted just as hard as poor Black people. How do we push policies forward when we still are battling that kind of thinking?
Yeah, that's a tough one. That's like $1 million question, right? I think that we have to continue to run progressive candidates up and down the ballot, candidates who value women's reproductive rights and their right to choose, and be unashamed. And we have to make sure that we're pushing that message even in races that we can't win. And it's very, very important that we don't lose faith and we don't lose hope. But all in all, again, we have to get people involved in the process. There are far too many of us that don't vote Democrat or Republican, but choose the couch instead. And they're disheartened by the process. We need to get those people involved in the process. That's the only way that we can win. I mean, this used to be, people forget, but up until the mid-90s, the legislature was Democratic. And then it flipped in South Carolina, and it seems that we're ruby red now. Not seems, we are ruby red now. But these things can change, and I think that there's a fracturing going on now and a cultural awakening now. We have to have candidates to take advantage of that, and we have to continue to push forward to take advantage of that.
What advice do you have for that person who could be listening that wants to take that step and run for office, but might be apprehensive?
Oh, read My Vanishing Country, right? But no, if you're listening, we need you. People are like, how do I raise money? I mean, you start with the list that your mom sends for your graduation announcements, right? And return envelope. I started with $1,000. That was it, and you go out and you knock on doors and you meet people where they are. And so these are all things that are not rocket science, but we have to be willing to put ourselves out there. We have to be willing to be a part of that. We have to be willing to be a part of that solution and willing to work hard and go out and do those things. And I've been so amazed over the last 3 years by how many people are now becoming a part of the process and running for office. We need more good people to do it.
Okay. That not being from South Carolina, it's very interesting to hear that it was a Democratic at one time, because all I've ever known is the Republican side of South Carolina. What do you say to young people wanting to get involved in activism and moving some of these policies forward now?
So every ounce of political change we've ever had in this country has been led by young people. Every ounce, from the gay rights movement to the women's rights movement to the civil rights movement, SNCC, CORE, SCLC. And so young people are always on the front lines of change, right? Always. And so it's important, it's essential that we make sure that we're lifting up those voices, that old people get out the way, all right? And I think that you never ask for permission, always ask for forgiveness. Ask yourself questions, if not me, then who, and if not now, then when. But we need young people to be on the front lines of the change. That's the only way we're going to see it. And Generation Z is doing an amazing job. They're the generation that's behind me, behind us, behind the millennial generation. And they are pushing forward with social change. They're pushing forward with change that we can believe in, and they're becoming a part of the solution.
I love it. I love how you talk about being a child of the civil rights movement and how you kind of grew up answering the phone for all these big civil rights names that we hear. How did they shape you as people who are our age looking to inspire this young group that's coming up? What did that mean to you, and what lessons did you take from them?
I harken back to what I said earlier, which is, I'm a product of the proverb, it takes a village to raise a child. All of these people were a part of my village. And it's important for us to, I wanted to lift those voices up, the Julian Bonds, the Marion Berries, the Septima Clarks, Majeska Simpkins. I wanted to give them life. I wanted to remember them, because my father always taught us that heroes walk among us, right? And they're people that we have to remember, that we have to give life to, that we have to give voice to.
Love it. Another important relationship that you highlighted in the book was that with your relationship with your friend Pop.
That's a complicated thing, wasn't it? It was complicated. It was conflict. It was love. It was brotherhood. I read that a lot. I read that chapter a lot, just to go back and see how complicated it is. But Pop is a success, and he is going to all the work he's doing now will make it easier for the next generation.
Yeah, I love it. And I love how you highlighted the differences of you two and how you kind of both brought out the best in each other.
That's what you have to do. That's what real friendship is. That's what love is. That's what brotherhood is. It's bringing out the best in each other, pushing each other to be better, to humble each other, and learn from each other's experience. One thing that we're absent of in this world is empathy, and Pop had empathy for me and I for him, and that drew us together and made us stronger.
One of the things that I took from that is as we're going through what we're going through right now in the world, we see a lot of young Black men needing to hear from other young Black men or older Black men. What do you see that Black men need to say to each other in this time right now?
So that's a good question, because we have to stay focused, and we have to begin to have these conversations. For far too long, I think that many Black men have felt taken for granted, not even spoken to. And one of the things in this book I wanted to do was begin to speak to Black men and to begin to make sure that they knew that we could have conversations that were centered on them, about them, or us, centered on us, about us, that can be fruitful, that show that we care. And I think that's necessary because, even in my anxiety chapter, I talk about those issues, and the fact that most Black men are of the belief that they don't have to talk to anybody, right? And I wanted to be sure that we are talking to people, and that we are sharing what's wrong with our mental health, and actually having legitimate conversations about that, so we can be better and we can be healthier.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big conversation. I have anxiety too, and so it was refreshing to like read about it from somebody else's perspective in a book. And it also helps normalize a conversation that you have to have.
But that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to normalize the conversation so that people could be comfortable in going out and talking about it and seeking help and having those discussions that are necessary. Because if you're not, especially with COVID, if you're not mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally healthy, then this is a very difficult time to navigate. And with everything we have going on in this world, we need to make sure that our people are strong enough to we need to make sure that our people are strong enough to get through it.
Yes. Yeah. I love it. What do you think are the next action steps for us with what is going on in the world right now? What advice do you have for people of what do we do now?
That's a good question. I think that one of the things that I'm glad you asked is we have to be solution oriented, right? We can't be wait until November and just show up and vote, because we've been doing that and people are still dying, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to be on a quest for justice. We have to be raising our voices. We have to talk about systemic reform, not just in criminal justice, but in environmental justice and educational justice, et cetera. We have to be organized. We have to work on getting our communities organized so that people are running for local office, so that people go to city council meetings, so that people raise those concerns, so that they're writing letters to the editors, they're donating to organizations that are doing the work on the ground, that they're marching in the streets, because if they see white, Black, and otherwise marching in the streets together, then that can be valuable. And so there are a bunch of things that people can do, and we just have to make sure that we're not telling people to go home. I always say that you can't ask for peace if you're unwilling to also ask for justice.
Right. Very true. Very, very true. I love that sentiment. I am so thankful for you taking time with us today to be able to talk about this.
And book. You heard my babies. They're excited in the background.
I know. I think one of them might be a preacher one day. That's what they used to say in the country.
That's right.
So for those of you who are tuned into our live, Bakari was going to be our keynote speaker at our Summer Institute conference.
I'm still going to be that though.
Yes, next year. Yes. We had to postpone due to COVID, unfortunately. Ms. Rona wouldn't let us be great, but we are so thankful. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about My Vanishing Country, Bakari Seller's new book. It is a perfect read for what is going on in the world right now, and talking about reforming political systems, reforming how we see the world, and also how do we have tough conversations about racism and injustice going on in the world. So that's what we're here talking about today. And we've kind of just been chatting about what's going on in the world right now. And I'm looking at our Facebook comments, getting lots of shout outs.
That's what's up.
And great questions. But one of the things that I loved about your book was how you talked about your sister and the relationship that you had. Yes. She says you had an old soul, but you gleaned a lot from each other. How has your sister inspired you and moved you forward in life?
Well, we always talk about those expectations, right? And so we're both children of the movement. We manifested in different ways, but it's pretty cool because she always pushes me and to be better than I am. She's a doctor at the VA there in Columbia and just doing amazing work and a great mom. And I think to myself often that, just trying to attain the level of success that she had, it just keeps me going. And for a long period of time, she was the person who cared for me. There was a big age gap between us. She was born in 73. I was born in 84. And so she was the one who took care of me. And Now, you know, we try to pay it forward, but she was always somebody who set a level of expectation to move us forward. And you know, it was our household was unique, but her level of success predated us all, and it kind of laid the groundwork for us to follow.
I love that. I think it's so important that we all have trusted adults or trusted people in our lives that
Yeah,
sometimes aren't
for
our
sure.
parents. So that's one of the reasons your relationship with your sister stood out a lot to me in the book. What advice do you have for young people about seeking out people that they can find to be trusted sources of information?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, because right now with everything going on in the world, it's hard to figure out who to look up to. But I always say find people who've excelled in the field that you want to go into. Don't find
Mhm.
somebody who is mediocre now. Find somebody who is really, really good at what they do, and ask them, how do you order your steps, and learn from them and watch them and read about them. I think that's important. There is a lot of there's a lot of education that has to be done. There is a lot of opportunity out there, and work on co-curricular experiences, which are internships, etc., that can help you flesh out your future and chart your path. And I think if you order your steps, there's no limit to what you can accomplish.
Mhm. Another section of the book that I really liked, and you do this so well on a daily basis, is you handle the trolls on Twitter very well.
Yeah.
So, how do you talk to your daughter about that? Like, what advice do you have for people about engaging with the trolls, feeding the trolls, and keeping it calm, cool, and collected?
Well, you know, my father gave me the best advice, which was, you never argue with fools, because people watching can't tell the difference. And I just try to stay above it. You know, the moon never howls back, right? The moon never howls back, and you have to keep that in mind when you're dealing with people who want to instigate and stir. There's a lot of courage on social media right now, especially from people who um, uh, uh, don't necessarily have to face any type of repercussion. It's a lot of courage that they display, and you just have to be willing to ignore it and move forward and know that Twitter is not real life.
Mhm,
And you also it's okay to take time away from social media,
mhm.
to breathe and actually do the work that's necessary. And so that's the way that I center myself and remain humble.
I love it. I love it. Um, Last thoughts. I think this has been a feeling conversation for me.
Well, I
I'm
just want
loving
to,
all the
and
shout
last
outs.
thoughts. Yeah, last thoughts are just thank you, thank you to the organization. I know that we had to switch gears because I was supposed to be there in person. I wish I could be, but thank you for reading the book. Thank you for sharing the book. I hope more people read it and go to Amazon or your local bookseller and get the book now if you're watching. I just think that there is so much that we have to learn about each other and the level of empathy we need. And you guys always have a friend and a supporter in me and my family. And whatever I can do for Fact Forward, we're there.
Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story with us and the time. I hope you guys enjoy your trip. Love on the babies for me.
I will. Thank you. Thank you for having me, even while I'm moving. And you hear Stokely in the background. So thank you so much.
Bye. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye
Thank
bye.
you.